The Lagos sun burned hot against the glass doors of the supermarket. At the top of the stairs stood Jerry Anderson, billionaire CEO of Gentech, dressed in a crisp navy upborder and a red cap. His face was hard with anger. Below him, an elderly woman in a torn blue Ankara dress clutched the railing, reaching up with trembling fingers. "Sir, please," she whispered. "Just bread. I haven't eaten." Jerry's jaw tightened. He had already warned this woman earlier to leave his car alone. She had followed him from the parking lot to the entrance, and now up the steps. Security guards lingered nearby, unsure whether to intervene. Jerry raised his right hand, his palm shaking with a strange mix of shame and rage. And then, through the heat and noise, a voice rang out, clear, firm, like a bell. "Don't slap her. She's your missing mother." Jerry froze. Everyone turned. At the edge of the steps stood a young woman in a tattered ash-gray gown, mud stains darkening the hem, her hair loose and wild around her face. She was thin, but her eyes were bright and steady. One hand was lifted toward Jerry, the other pressed to her chest as if guarding a secret. "My what?" Jerry's voice dropped to a low, dangerous tremor. "Your mother," the young woman said softly. "Don't touch her." For a heartbeat, everything went still, the traffic, the crowd, even the old woman's breath. The only sound was the soft flutter of her scarf shaking in the wind. 10 minutes earlier, Jerry had stepped out of his black SUV, his driver trailing behind him. His meetings in Banana Island had run long, now he was here to grab a few items himself. He walked with the brisk pace of a man accustomed to bending the world to his will. He hadn't noticed the eyes following him from the edge of the lot. He hadn't seen the young woman stepping out from under the nearby bridge. He hadn't seen the old woman on the curb, holding an empty plastic bowl. She had called out once, twice, softly. "My son," she murmured to no one. "God, please." By the time Jerry reached the doors, security had tried to move her along. She refused to leave. Not today. Something had pulled her here, some hope that refused to die. Now, back at the top of the stairs, Jerry tried to steady his voice. "Who are you?" he asked the young woman. "And how do you know this old woman is my..." He couldn't finish the word. The crowd pressed closer, phones held high. "My name is Amora," the young woman said. "I don't have much, but I have one gift. I read faces. I see what most people miss. I saw you from the road. I saw her waiting here. And I knew." "You knew what?" Jerry asked sharply, trying to mask the fear rising in him like smoke. "That the same story lives in both your faces," Amora said softly. "The same pain around the eyes. The same way your mouth tightens before you speak. And something else." She turned to the old woman. "Mama, may I see your right wrist?" The old woman, Madam Momoka, though no one knew her name yet, lifted her thin arm. Years had carved maps across her skin. Amora gently pushed up the frayed sleeve. There, near the veins, was a small, dark birthmark shaped like a comma. Amora turned to Jerry. "Sir," she said, "show yours." Jerry swallowed hard. His driver shifted as if to intervene, but Jerry shook his head. Slowly, he pulled up his right sleeve. The crowd leaned in. There it was, the same small mark, a comma by a blue vein. The sound that rose from the steps was not loud but soft and full, like a door opening where there had only been a war. Jerry's hand dropped. His eyes darted from his wrist to the old woman's face. She was crying quietly now, tears slipping into lines that had waited for this day. "I've had this since birth," Jerry said, his voice cracking. "My mother had it too. She went missing 15 years ago. We searched everywhere." His words broke. He stepped closer, falling to his knees on the hot stone. His palm went to his chest as if to hold his heart in place. "Mama," he whispered. The word was small, lost, and found all at once. "Mama, where have you been?" The old woman reached for his face with trembling hands, touching his cheeks as though blessing a child. "My son," she breathed. "My Jerry. I have looked for you in every face I saw." Jerry's tears fell fast. He pressed his forehead to the back of her hand. "Forgive me," he said, shaking his head. "I didn't know. I didn't know. I was about to." He couldn't finish the sentence. "It is over," she said softly. "Today it is over." Even the security guards looked away to hide their wet eyes. Amora stood beside them, still and quiet, as though she had only opened a door the world had been waiting to enter. Jerry looked up at her. "Amora," he whispered, as if saying it might make sense of the moment. "How did you know?" "I told you," she said. "I read faces. It's a strange gift. I don't know how to make money from it, but I know when a face belongs to another face." The old woman's body swayed. The heat, hunger, and tears all crashed through her at once. Jerry caught her as her knees gave way. "Driver," he shouted. "Start the car, we're going to the hospital now." Security cleared a path as the crowd parted. The black SUV door opened wide, cool air spilling into the heat. Inside, Jerry placed his mother gently on the seat, his hands trembling. Amora slipped in beside her, lifting the old woman's head onto her lap. "Mama," she said softly. "Stay with us. We are almost there." The city blurred by, billboards, yellow buses, hawkers waving sachet water. Jerry dialed his hospital contact with shaking fingers. "Prepare a bed," he said. "Now. It's my mother." Her chest rose and fell in shallow waves. Her fingers searched for his and found them. Jerry squeezed her hand like a boy clutching a light in the dark. "I took so long," he whispered. "But I found you." Traffic opened like a gift. The SUV flew down the road. When they reached the hospital, nurses rushed out with a stretcher. Jerry carried his mother inside, stepping into a bright, cold light, and straight into a truth that would change everything. The automatic glass doors hissed open as Jerry carried his mother into the emergency ward. Nurses rushed forward, their white shoes squeaking against the polished tiles. The air smelled of antiseptic, sharp and cold, and the fluorescent lights painted everything in hard shadows. "BP check. Prepare oxygen," one nurse barked, her eyes flicking from Jerry to the frail old woman in his arms. Gently, Jerry lowered his mother onto the stretcher. His hand lingered on hers even as the nurses wheeled her away. "Don't leave me again," he whispered under his breath, too soft for anyone else to hear. Amara followed, barefoot and silent, her torn ash gown drawing curious stares, but her focus never wavered from Madame Momoko. She whispered softly, almost like a prayer, as if her voice alone could hold the old woman to life. They were ushered into a treatment room. A tall doctor with a calm, unreadable face stepped forward, stethoscope swinging at his neck. "Sir, you need to wait outside while we stabilize her." "No," Jerry snapped. His voice was raw, sharp. "She's my mother. 15 years I thought she was dead. You're not pushing me away now." The doctor hesitated. Amora touched Jerry's arm lightly. Her voice was soft but firm. "Let them walk. Please." Jerry looked at her, saw the exhaustion carved into her face, the mud still caked on her dress, yet somehow she steadied him. He exhaled hard, nodded, and stepped back. The door closed. Through the glass, Jerry could see nurses moving fast, straps, for tubes, oxygen masks. His knuckles whitened on the railing of the corridor. Minutes dragged like hours. He had built empires, signed billion-dollar contracts, commanded presidents. But here, in a hospital hallway, he was just a boy again, waiting for his mother to return from somewhere unknown. On a bench nearby, Amora sat with her head bowed, lips moving in silent prayer. She looked like someone used to waiting, someone who had lost much but still clung to hope. Jerry's driver approached carefully. "Sir, should I call the family?" Jerry turned sharply. "There is no family," he said flatly. Then his eyes flicked to Amora, softening. "Not anymore. Just her." He didn't finish the thought. The door opened. The doctor stepped out, peeling off his gloves. Jerry's chest tightened. "She is stable, for now," the doctor said. Relief flashed across Jerry's face, but it faded as the doctor continued, "Her body shows signs of long-term malnutrition. And trauma." Jerry frowned. "What kind of trauma?" The doctor's eyes shifted to the faint bruised rings around Madame Momoko's wrist. Restraints. Possibly chains. Old scars, too. Whatever happened to her, it wasn't just being lost on the streets. Jerry's stomach twisted. His jaw clenched. The image of the small rusted chain flashed in his mind. "I need answers," he muttered. "For now," the doctor said, "she needs rest. Food. Care. Family." His voice softened. "She called your name while she was fading. She hasn't forgotten you." Jerry pressed his hand to his face, his breath sharp. 15 years. 15 years stolen. He had buried an empty coffin, mourned a woman still alive. "Can I see her?" Amora asked quietly. The doctor nodded. "Yes, but gently." Inside, Madame Momoko lay pale against the pillow, oxygen tubes under her nose. Jerry took her hand, tears sliding down his cheeks. "Mama," he whispered. "I thought I lost you forever." Her eyelids fluttered. Slowly, her gaze found his face. "My Jerry," she murmured, voice faint but steady. "You grew into a man, and I was not there to see it." Jerry lowered his head, pressing his lips against her hand. "I would trade every bit of my wealth if it meant having you back sooner." Her frail fingers brushed his hair. "Don't cry. I am here now." Amora stood silently, her eyes glistening. Something about this moment carved deep into her chest, reminding her of everything she had lost, and what she had just helped restore. Jerry turned to her. "Amora, you saved me from the worst mistake of my life. You saved us both." She shook her head. "I only spoke what I saw." "No," Jerry said firmly. "You gave me my mother back. Without you, I would have raised my hand against the very woman who gave me life. I owe you everything." Before Amora could respond, a nurse entered the room, holding something wrapped in cloth. Her face was tense. "Mr. Anderson," she said, her voice uneasy. "We found this inside your mother's dress." She unwrapped the cloth. In her palm lay a small rusted chain link, dull under the fluorescent light but heavy with unspeakable weight. Jerry's blood ran cold. "Why would she hide this?" he whispered. Amora's voice was quiet, but it carried like a blade. "Because it is proof. Proof of who did this to her." Jerry's hand curled into a fist. His eyes darkened. "Then whoever chained my mother is still out there. And they thought I would never find her." Madame Momoko stirred weakly, as if she sensed the storm building in her son. Jerry leaned close, pressing her hand to his chest. "Mama," he whispered. "Rest. I will find the truth. I promise you." Later that night, Jerry stood in the hospital corridor, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was cold, clipped, each word wrapped in fury. "Detective Sola, it's Anderson. Drop everything. I don't care if you're in Abuja or Port Harcourt, get to Lagos now. My mother has been found. And I have reason to believe she was kept hidden against her will." He paused, his jaw tight. Then, slowly, "Yes. I'll pay whatever it takes. Just get here." When he hung up, Amara was there, barefoot in the hallway light. "You mean to investigate?" she said quietly. Jerry met her gaze, his eyes sharp, burning. Wouldn't you? Someone stole 15 years of my life. They let me grieve an empty coffin. They made me into a man with no roots. That chain, he swallowed hard, his voice trembling, is not just metal. It's a message. And Jerry Anderson had just decided he was going to answer it. The hospital corridor hummed with low voices and distant footsteps. Jerry stood at the window, his reflection jagged in the glass, Lagos lights burning far below. Amora lingered a few steps behind, silent but watchful. Detective Sola will be here by morning, Jerry said without turning. His voice was low, almost dangerous. But I can't wait that long. Amora tilted her head. Then what will you do? Jerry faced her. His eyes were sharp, a storm gathering. Start digging. Someone kept my mother alive but hidden. Someone chained her. Someone thought they could bury the truth forever. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a vow. They were wrong. The hospital door creaked open. Jerry's driver entered quietly, holding a slim folder. Sir, he said, this came from the nurses. Items found on Madam Momoko's person. He placed the folder on the table. Inside were scraps, a faded photograph torn in half, an old bus ticket, a matchbox with the name of a roadside motel printed across it. And the chain link, heavier now than before. Jerry's fingers brushed over the photograph. It was too damaged to see clearly, just the edge of a man's suit, a hand resting on someone's shoulder. His jaw tightened. She kept this hidden, Amora said softly, leaning over the table. Her eyes lingered on the ticket, the ink barely legible. Maybe they were pieces of the story she couldn't say out loud. Jerry closed the folder with a snap. Then we'll make the story speak. The next morning, Detective Sola arrived, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that missed nothing. He greeted Jerry with a firm handshake, but his voice was wary. You don't call me unless the sky is falling, Sola said. What's going on? Jerry didn't waste time. He opened the folder, sliding the chain link across the table. My mother. 15 years missing. Found yesterday. Alive. Barely. Sola's eyes narrowed. He picked up the chain, turning it over. Restraints, he muttered. Industrial. Old. Not street work. This was deliberate. Jerry's hand tightened on the table's edge. She was taken. Hidden. By who, I don't know. But someone is going to tell me. Sola leaned back. And if it's bigger than you think? If this runs deeper than family drama or street thugs? Jerry's eyes burned. Then I dig deeper. I've built an empire fighting men who thought they couldn't be touched. I'll burn the ground if I have to. Amora spoke quietly from the corner. Start with the ticket. Both men turned. She held the faded bus stop delicately between her fingers. It's from Oshodi Terminal. Date, 14 years ago. Destination, Ibadan. Sola raised a brow. You have sharp eyes, miss. Amora didn't flinch. I watch faces. And details. It's what I do. Jerry's voice cut in. Then that's where we start. Ibadan. By nightfall, Jerry, Amora, and Sola were in the back of the black SUV, the city lights falling away behind them as the highway opened. The road stretched wide and dark, peppered with headlights and the smell of dust. Amora sat pressed against the window, her ash gown replaced with a clean shirt and jeans Jerry had quietly arranged. She still looked out of place in his world, but her eyes carried the same steady light. Jerry broke the silence. 15 years ago, my mother disappeared after a gala. My father filed reports, hired private detectives. Nothing. I thought she was dead. His jaw tightened. Now I find her in rags, half-starved, carrying a piece of the chain that held her. Sola nodded slowly. If she was taken, someone had risen to erase her. To silence her. Jerry glanced at Amora. But she lived. And she kept proof. Amora didn't look away. Maybe because she knew this day would come. The SUV pushed deeper into the night. Ahead, Ibadan waited with its sprawling streets, its secrets buried in the cracks. And somewhere in those shadows was the truth about Madam Momoko, the chains, the scars, the missing years. Jerry clenched his fist, his voice low but certain. Whoever did this thought the past was dead. They are about to learn it isn't. The SUV rolled into Ibadan just before dawn, headlights washing over streets that were still half asleep. The city breathed in a rhythm different from Lagos, slower, yet heavy with whispers of things unsaid. Jerry stepped out first, stretching his tall frame against the pale sky. Amara followed, quiet but alert, her gaze darting across the weathered buildings and crowded stalls preparing for morning trade. Sola locked the SUV with a sharp click and joined them. Their first stop was the bus terminal. It hadn't changed much in 14 years, still noisy, chaotic, alive with hawkers selling bread, sachet water, and phone credits. The air smelled of petrol, sweat, and roasted corn. Jerry scanned the crowd, the old ticket stub burning in his pocket. She boarded a bus here. Why? Where was she going? Sola pulled out his notepad. Destination says Ibadan North. There's only one line that much back then runs through Oju. Let's start with the records office. The so-called records office was a cracked kiosk manned by an elderly clerk with thick glasses. He squinted at them suspiciously before Sola flashed his badge. 14 years ago, Sola said flatly. Passenger list. Bus route 19 to Oju. Chumi. The old man frowned. 14 years. That's long gone. Jerry leaned forward, sliding a crisp envelope onto the desk. The clerk's eyes flicked to it, then back up, but his fingers were already pulling out a dusty ledger from under the counter. Sola flipped through the brittle pages until his hand stilled. Here. April 11, 2009. Passenger, M. Momoka. Paid cash. No seat number. Jerry's chest tightened. Proof. His mother had been here. But before he could speak, Amora's voice cut softly through the tension. Look at the entry under hers. Both men leaned in. Another name, scribbled in the same hand, O. Dunlody. Sola's eyes narrowed. Dunlody. He closed the ledger. That's not a common name. Could be the same Dunlody that worked for your father's political rival. Jerry's expression darkened. Memories flickered, his father at smoky meetings, whispers of betrayals, deals that turned bloody. Where can we find him? Jerry asked. Sola tapped the ledger. Oju sighed. If he's alive, someone will know. The streets of Oju were awake by the time they arrived. Crowded markets pressed in from both sides, women balancing baskets on their heads, bus conductors yelling for passengers. Jerry, Amara, and Sola moved like shadows through the chaos, asking quiet questions, dropping small bribes. The name Dunlody stirred faint reactions, some fear, some indifference, but always recognition. Finally, an old mechanic pointed them toward a derelict house on the edge of the district. Dunlody used to stay there, he rasped, grease staining his hands. But he disappeared, maybe 12 years ago. People say he crossed the wrong men. Jerry's jaw tightened. What men? The mechanic spat oil-dark flame into the dirt. Politicians. Secret ones. You don't ask too many questions, Oga. They reached the house by late afternoon. It was half collapsed, windows broken, weeds curling up the steps. Sola pushed open the door, dust swirling in the light. Inside, the air was stale, thick with mildew and rot. Old papers littered the floor, along with bottles and scraps of clothing. Amara bent down, sifting through the debris with delicate hands. "Here," she whispered, lifting a fragment of newspaper. On it, a headline circled in red ink. "Minister Kola expands security contracts, 2010. Jerry froze. Kola. His father's old rival. A man ruthless enough to bury enemies under concrete if it suited him. Sola cursed under his breath. This wasn't random. If Dunlody was tied to Kola, then your mother wasn't just kidnapped. She was silenced. Jerry's fist clenched. And chained. For 15 years. Amora's gaze softened, but her voice was steady. Then Kola still holds answers. And maybe more prisoners. The room fell into heavy silence. Jerry felt the weight of the chain link in his pocket, heavier than ever. This was no longer about a missing mother. It was about power, secrets, and a war that had started long before he was ready to fight. Sola finally spoke, his tone grim. "If we go after Kola, we don't walk in blind. He has reach, protection, money. But if we follow this trail, we'll stir up a storm the whole country will feel." Jerry looked at Amora, then back at Sola. His voice was low but unshakable. "Then let it rain." Night fell heavy over Ibadan, the kind of darkness that made the city's edges blur. The derelict house creaked in the wind as Jerry, Amora, and Sola sat in silence, the weight of the discovery pressing on them. Sola lit a cigarette, his eyes never leaving the torn newspaper on the table. "Kola's name keeps coming up, but if we charge at him directly, we'll be dead before we reach his gates." Jerry leaned forward, his face shadowed. "Then we find the men under him. The ones who carried out the orders." Dunlody was a link. "There have to be more." Amora's gaze was steady, her voice soft but cutting through the tension. "People like Kola never get their own hands dirty. They use shadows. Find the shadows, and you'll find the truth." Sola exhaled smoke, watching it coil toward the ceiling. "There's someone in Ibadan who used to keep books for men like him. Ex-accountant. Lives like a ghost now. They call him T numbers. If anyone knows where Dunlody ended up, or why Momoko was taken, it's him." Jerry's eyes glinted. "Where do we find him?" Sola stubbed out the cigarette. "Deep in Oya Market. But getting close won't be easy. He doesn't talk to strangers, and he doesn't stay alive by chance." The next morning, the trio slipped into Oya Market. The air buzzed with traders' cries, the smell of fried akara mixing with exhaust fumes. Jerry moved with quiet power, his tailored jacket drawing eyes even in the chaos. Amora walked slightly behind, her new jeans and shirt blending her more into the crowd, though her aura was anything but ordinary. Sola led them through twisting alleys until they stopped at a dim back stall stacked with old ledgers and calculators missing keys. Behind the counter sat a gaunt man in his 60s, his skin pale from years away from sunlight, eyes sharp and calculating. "T numbers," Sola said, keeping his voice low. The old man didn't look up. "Sola. You bring Lagos trouble to my door." Sola smirked. "This one's bigger than Lagos. It's about Kola." At the mention of the name, T's hand paused mid-page. Slowly, he looked up at Jerry and then Amora. His lips curved into a humorless smile. "You shouldn't have spoken that name here. Some walls still have ears." Jerry leaned closer. "My mother. Momoko. She was taken 15 years ago. Chained. We found her half dead. Dunlody's name was next to hers on a passenger list. And Kola's shadow keeps following the trail." For the first time, T's mask of indifference cracked. His eyes widened, then narrowed again. He closed the ledger and slid it aside. "Dunlody, yes, I remember him. He wasn't just a messenger. He was a keeper." "Keeper of what?" Amora asked, her voice calm but urgent. T's gaze flickered to her, studying the quiet fire in her eyes. He lowered his voice. Keeper of houses. Safe houses. The ones Kola used when he wanted something, or someone, disappeared. Jerry's heartbeat pounded in his ears. Where? Tay hesitated, his bony fingers drumming on the desk. Even speaking it put my life at risk. But if Momoko survived, it means Kola's chain is weaker than it looks. Sola slid an envelope across the table. Tay didn't touch it. Instead, he leaned forward, his whisper razor-sharp. There's a compound outside Ibadan. Old missionary grounds. People say it's abandoned. But I've seen men go in at night and never come out. That's where you'll find your answers. Before Jerry could respond, a shout echoed from the market street. Then another. The sound of boots, many boots, pounded closer. Sola cursed. We've been followed. Tay's face hardened. Get out. Now. If Kola's men see you here, I'm a dead man. Jerry grabbed Amora's hand, pulling her toward the back exit as Sola shoved the ledger into his jacket. Outside, the alley erupted with shadows, armed men closing in, faces hard, eyes locked on them. Amora's breath hitched, but her grip was firm. Jerry's voice cut like steel. They want a hunt. He pulled the chain link from his pocket, the metal glinting in the dark. His eyes blazed. Then let's give them one. The shouts grew louder, blending with the frantic cries of traders scrambling to protect their goods. Steel clattered against steel as machetes were drawn, and the crowd scattered like birds startled into flight. Sola shoved Jerry forward. Go. But Jerry didn't move. He turned, eyes narrowing at the shadows closing in. Half a dozen men emerged, dressed in plain clothes but moving with soldier precision. One pointed at Jerry, his voice cutting through the chaos. Boss said he wants him alive. That was all Jerry needed to hear. He pushed Amara behind a fruit stall and stepped into the center of the alley. His fist clenched, the chain link still in his palm, heavy like a promise. You want me? Jerry's voice thundered. Come take me. The first attacker lunged with a blade. Jerry sidestepped, caught the man's wrist, and slammed his head against a wooden post. The crack was sickening, and the man collapsed before his blade hit the ground. Two more came at once. Jerry ducked low, driving his shoulder into one's gut while kicking the other's knee out from under him. Painful grunts filled the alley, followed by the crash of overturned crates. Amora's heart raced, her breath shallow, but she refused to cower. When a stray attacker spotted her hiding place and lunged, she grabbed a glass bottle from the fruit stall and smashed it against his temple. He staggered, blood streaking his face, and she shoved him hard into the dirt. Sola was a storm of precision. He drew his sidearm and fired twice into the air, crowd scattering even faster, before turning the muzzle on the advancing men. Back off, he barked. His shots weren't meant to kill but to remind them that he wouldn't hesitate. Still, the men pressed in. Jerry caught the leader, a tall man with a scar slashing across his cheek. Their eyes locked. Scarred cheek sneered. You should have stayed in Lagos, boy. Now you'll bleed in the dust. Jerry's reply was a brutal punch that sent the man reeling into a market stall. Tomatoes and peppers rained down on his unconscious body. The rest hesitated. For the first time, fear crept into their movements. Jerry stood in the middle of the wreckage, his shirt torn, sweat glistening on his brow, breathing like a man who had tasted battle and was hungry for more. Tell Kola, Jerry snarled, his voice low and little, that his chains didn't hold. And when I find him, I'll break his neck with the same iron he used on my mother. The surviving men exchanged uncertain glances before retreating into the shadows. Sola lowered his weapon, still tense. Amora stepped out from behind the store, her hands trembling but her eyes blazing. She looked at Jerry, bloodied knuckles, chest heaving, fury burning in his gaze, and for the first time, she saw not just a businessman, but a warrior. "We can't stay here," Sola said quickly, reloading his gun. "They'll be back with more." Jerry nodded, scooping up the chain link from the ground. "Then we move to the compound," Amora whispered, almost to herself, "into the lion's den." Jerry turned to her, his expression fierce but steady. "No. Into the lion's cage. And this time, we bring the fire."